As people get older, waking up around 3 a.m. becomes increasingly common, and it often feels frustrating or confusing. Although it can seem like a sign that something is wrong, this sleep pattern is usually tied to natural changes in the brain and body that occur with age. The internal circadian clock, which regulates sleep and wake cycles, tends to shift earlier over time. This means that older adults may feel sleepy earlier in the evening and, as a result, wake up earlier in the morning, sometimes hours before they would prefer. Hormonal changes contribute as well. Melatonin, the hormone that signals the body it's time to sleep, declines with age, reducing the ability to stay asleep through the night. Cortisol, the stress hormone, may also rise earlier in the morning, nudging the body into wakefulness around the same time every night. These 3 a.m. awakenings can also reflect lighter sleep overall. Deep sleep naturally decreases as people get older, making them more sensitive to noise, temperature shifts, or physical discomfort. Medical conditions such as arthritis, reflux, restless leg syndrome, or even the need to use the bathroom become more common with age and can break up sleep more easily. Medications often play a role too, as many prescriptions and over-the-counter drugs can cause nighttime wakefulness or changes in sleep quality. The effects of these early morning awakenings can extend into daytime health. When sleep becomes fragmented, it can lead to fatigue, reduced concentration, irritability, or a lower threshold for stress. Chronic sleep disruption may weaken immune function, make it harder to regulate emotions, and contribute to increased fall risk, particularly when drowsiness persists during the day. For some older adults, frequent 3 a.m. waking can also amplify feelings of anxiety or loneliness, particularly if they lie awake worrying about the lack of sleep itself. Waking up at 3 a.m. is not always harmful. For some, it reflects a natural shift in sleep patterns rather than a health problem. The key is how often it occurs, whether the person is able to fall back asleep, and how they feel during the day. Maintaining a consistent sleep routine, reducing evening stimulation, limiting late caffeine or alcohol, keeping the bedroom cool and dark, and getting morning sunlight can all support a more stable sleep cycle. When early wake-ups are frequent and accompanied by daytime impairment, speaking with a healthcare provider can help identify underlying causes and improve overall sleep quality as people age. The body's circadian rhythm, the internal clock that guides sleep and wake cycles, subtle but steady changes that influence how and when sleep occurs. These shifts are a natural part of aging and originate from biological adjustments within the brain, particularly within the suprachiasmatic nucleus, the region responsible for regulating circadian timing. Over time, this internal clock begins to drift earlier, meaning the body starts signaling for sleep sooner in the evening and rouses itself earlier in the morning. This shift is not merely a matter of preference or habit, it reflects changes in how the brain interprets light cues, how hormones are released, and how sensitive the body becomes to sleep disturbances. As this circadian pattern moves forward, many older adults find themselves naturally inclined to fall asleep earlier than they once did, even if they try to maintain a later bedtime. As a result, waking in the early hours of the morning, such as around 3 a.m., becomes more common. Not because something is wrong, but because the body's timing system has changed. One of the major influences on this process is the gradual decrease in melatonin production. Melatonin is the hormone responsible for signaling to the brain that it is time to prepare for sleep, and it normally increases in the evening and remains elevated through the night. With age, the amount of melatonin produced diminishes, and its peak occurs earlier. This means that the signal to become drowsy happens sooner, but the hormone also wears off earlier, making it more difficult to maintain continuous sleep. When melatonin levels drop in the early morning hours, the body becomes more alert. This alertness can surface as an abrupt awakening, especially if the bedroom environment is not completely quiet or dark, because melatonin plays a role not only in initiating sleep, but also in stabilizing it. Reduced levels make sleep more fragile and easier to interrupt. Another contributing factor is the age-related change in the body's sensitivity to light, which plays a central role in regulating the sleep-wake cycle. As people get older, the eyes transmit less light to the brain due to changes in the lens and retina. Since the circadian clock depends heavily on light exposure to stay synchronized, reduced light input can cause the clock to shift earlier than intended. Many older adults also get less bright light during the day, particularly morning light due to spending more time indoors. Changes in routine or mobility limitations. Without strong daytime light cues, the circadian rhythm becomes less anchored to a stable schedule. This weakened entrainment leads to earlier sleep onset and earlier awakenings, because the internal clock is not receiving the daylight signals that help maintain a later wake time. In addition, insufficient exposure to natural morning light can make the body rely more heavily on its internal tendencies, which generally drift earlier with age. The structure of sleep itself also changes as part of the circadian shift. The proportion of deep, restorative, slow-wave sleep naturally declines over the lifespan. This deep sleep, which helps maintain a stable and uninterrupted night of rest, becomes shorter and less consistent. As deep sleep decreases, lighter stages of sleep take up a greater share of the night. Light sleep is much more sensitive to internal cues like hunger, thirst, or body temperature fluctuations, as well as external stimuli such as noises or small movements. Even mild discomfort or a slight environmental change can awaken someone who is in a light sleep stage, because older adults experience more time in these sensitive stages of sleep. Early awakenings become not only more likely but more persistent. Once awake, the earlier circadian phase can make it difficult to return to sleep, because the body may already be transitioning toward its morning alertness cycle. Another layer of circadian influence involves cortisol. The hormone associated with alertness and the body's response to stress. Cortisol levels naturally rise before waking to help prepare the body for the day. In younger adults, this rise tends to occur closer to a typical wake time. In older adults, however, this early morning cortisol increase often begins sooner, fitting the shifted circadian schedule. When cortisol begins rising too early in the night, it pushes the body toward wakefulness before the desired morning hour. Even when a person tries to return to sleep, the presence of higher cortisol can make it harder to drift back. As the body is receiving internal cues promoting wakefulness rather than rest, lifestyle changes associated with aging can also reinforce these circadian rhythm shifts. Many older adults experience reduced physical activity, fewer structured daytime commitments, and the circadian clock is influenced not only by light but also by behavioral patterns such as eating, exercise, and social interaction. Earlier dinners and quieter evenings provide fewer late-day cues that help anchor the circadian rhythm. When the body receives signals that the day is winding down earlier, it adjusts by shifting the wake signal earlier as well. Napping during the day, which becomes more common with age due to fluctuating energy levels, can further advance the circadian phase. Even short naps can reduce sleep pressure, the internal drive that builds throughout the day and helps maintain a solid stretch of nighttime sleep. With lower sleep pressure at night, the body is more likely to drift into lighter sleep and more vulnerable to early awakenings. The neurological changes that accompany aging also play a role. The suprachiasmatic nucleus can lose some of its cells over time, weakening its ability to maintain a strong and consistent circadian rhythm. As the strength of this rhythm decreases, sleep becomes more fragmented and less consolidated. The weaker the circadian signal, the more easily sleep becomes disrupted. A strong circadian rhythm helps override small disturbances. A weakened one leaves the brain more susceptible to them. This reduced circadian strength reinforces the tendency toward earlier sleep and earlier waking, creating a cycle in which the timing becomes increasingly advanced. All of these interconnected physiological changes contribute to why older adults tend to sleep earlier and wake earlier, and why their sleep becomes lighter and more easily disturbed as the years pass.